Let us do it live. Alright. Well, hello and welcome everyone to Gamestate episode 4. It is Monday, August the 13th. I am your host, Adam, a winner is you, Ragsdale, and with me are my lovely fellow hosts, Glenn Jones, event coverage manager for Star City Games,
Hello, everybody.
poker pro and longtime Magic aficionado, Stephen Flavel,
Woo!
and professional magician, Cedric Phillips.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everybody.
Cedric.
So we're going to have a bit of a lighter episode today. Hopefully, in actuality, I know we said that last week and it didn't end up happening, but hopefully it will actually happen today. There was just one Star City event this past weekend, Star City, Kansas City. And so we're going to touch on Star City, Kansas City Standard, Star City, Kansas City Legacy, and then we're going to retouch on coverage in Magic today, and possibly we will also touch on Legacy versus Modern. But those are going to be our topics for this evening, and we are going to jump right into it. Star City, Kansas City, the Standard Edition was won by Mike Prokop with a Delver variant. The top 8 was 3 Delver variants, 2 Pod variants, one of them full of Zombors, and then 1 red-green aggro, 1 Wolf Run with blue, and 1 Infect deck. Large stories from the event include Infect just sort of poisoning people to death, and then Zombor Pod being a thing, and nothing else really exciting happening. So without any further ado, I am going to throw it to Cedric Phillips, and we are going to start discussing the Infect deck from the top 8. So, Cedric, how do you feel?
Infect aficionado,
Yes.
Cedric Phillips. Thank you. If you guys were here last week, you knew about pretty much my love for that deck. I was playing it online a pretty healthy amount, and seeing a lot of success with it. I'm not too surprised that it got second place by Nick Marriott, and his only loss was actually in the finals to the Delver opponent. I sent some people to PTQs last week and this week with Infect as well, and one of my buddies ended up losing in the quarters due to a mistake he made in the quarterfinals against an iPod. Long story short, the deck is good. It's something... I think the reason the deck is good, outside of it just being a pretty powerful combo deck, is, and this is something that we talked about on last week's show, is that people are slow to adapt in real life, where they're not very slow to adapt online. And so, you know, there was an article last week by Adrian Sullivan and a video by Sam Black about Infect, and no one really adapted to it for this weekend. So as a result, you know, people are playing it in PTQs to some success. Nick got second with it. Whereas I was playing it online over the weekend, and I played against someone who played Malaria on turn 2, game 1 against me. So, people are slower to adapt in real life than online. So as a result, I think that Infect is going to be good for like another couple of days or maybe like another week. Whereas online, it's like borderline unplayable because everyone has malarias and all of this hate, and I have a pretty good idea how to play against it. I do think that the deck is quite good. It's a lot more resilient than people think, and it's the only combo deck in our format right now. So if you like to play combo, even though it's attacking, it is the combo deck, and I do think it's a very realistic option for people to play.
Alright, that seems totally reasonable to me. Steven, how do you feel about poisoning people, giving them the sickness?
Well, my opinion is that the deck sort of sucks, and you and I have talked about this before, so I know that we have very similar views, and maybe I'll be running up your points. I did some math on Infect. I want to say, by the way, that deck sort of won the tournament. He, like, threw those finals away pretty hard. But
That's awkward.
anyway, some math on the deck. Playing 20 lands, 12 forests, and we have like 14 creatures, counting Greenstone Zenith. So sort of like an A plus B plus C combo deck, and you're obviously trying to draw a creature some pump spells and the lands which actually let you cast the creature. And you just, you have no card filter. You have very few color sources. I did some math and worked out that you hit a hand with a green source and a creature in it 68% of the time with a hand of 7, which is not great. And you're mulliganing every hand that doesn't have those, and you're going to mulligan some hands that do, because they're obviously that's just the very, very base level. You still need a bit more to get a playable hand. So I think the deck loses to itself a huge amount. You have to also understand that piece A is a 1 toughness creature, and there are a couple of ways to deal with a 1 toughness creature in Standard. So yeah, I mean, my opinion of Infect, because obviously it did very well, and it can beat people, it can wreck people's face. I think that a lot of the good things it does are very similar to what Delver does, though. You put Rancor on Glistener Elf, and you have a 4-turn clock, right? You could put Rancor on a Delver, and you would also have a 4-turn clock. You just do the math there. It has that explosiveness that a low Delver list is going to have. It has the ability to kill people in the mid-game with you finally resolve your creature and you have 3 pump spells in hand and Apostle's Blessing, bam, you're dead. But Delver gets that as well with Runechatter's Pike in the mid-game, I think. And I think Delver just has much higher quality everywhere else. It has much more consistency. It has better creatures. It has better spells. Much, much better spells. Looking at the list, I just think a couple of changes I would make are just to get the combo in place more often, dropping Gataxian Probes for more lands, and dropping a couple of the weaker sort of pump spells for the last 2 copies of Green Sun Zenith. I think that's going to get you mulliganing a lot less at least, and that's where I would head with the deck. Overall, though, I would rather just play Delver, and I think it does many of the same things.
Glenn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I like the Delver comparison. I hadn't consciously really made that connection, but it's valid. In a lot of ways, the decks are similar. They're both packed with a relatively low quantity of cheap threats, and they're trying to line up cheap tempo cards against their opponent's more expensive options. So you're just trying to get in underneath them before they do anything really strong enough to stop you. It's worth pointing out that I think one of the reasons Infect is a reasonable choice catching on right now is because Thragtusk has been such a weapon against Delver, and it's not a weapon against Infect. It's borderline useless. I can't think of even a 5/3 beater is not doing anything. It's I'm dead in 4 turns. All right, let me know when you're getting close. So the strength of Inkmoth Nexus with the various effects, especially Cathedral War being the new big one, is another selling point because you kind of get an uncounterable creature that's difficult to interact with in the ways you want to. Delver, you kind of have to. There are those times where you're probe you and you see a gut shot and a fume spitter or something or whatever, and you're just oh well, whatever. Here's the Delver, go. And there's just not anything else you can do in those positions. But with the Infect deck, you can play around a lot of stuff until it's time to go for it. So I can see that, although that obviously winds up just leaving you in the boat of man, my deck's really good when I draw Inkmoth Nexus, but I don't have a way to make sure I do that other than just mulliganing to Inkmoth Nexus, which, as you pointed out, is not an especially viable strategy because You're just going to lose a lot of games to not having cards and not being able to accrue them. The deck did impress me. One of the strengths, I think, is that people don't know it that well. It's one of those decks people have been writing off for really no reason. Mostly they just saw it and they're oh, it's some guy trying to make Infect work again. People don't reevaluate often enough in these circumstances. So I imagine they will now. That's going to affect how well it can do. So you have to change your lines of play against them a lot. There are all kinds of anecdotes of, people just gut-shotting at wrong times or whatever. And one of the things that was funny in this tournament actually was while watching the Delver player who won play, he almost always, at least in the games I was watching, against everybody he played, gut-shotted immediately when they presented a creature, never went upkeep, draw step, now I'll gut-shot you. So kind of giving away information, although it's a super thin margin and it's not really relevant the vast majority of the time. But against Infect, that can often wind up being just correct. If you're end of turn gut shot and they have something untap, okay, well now I know what I'm doing, can contend with this, and if I have another gut shot, I don't have to worry about that pump spell still resolving or doing something weird or a blessing in response countering both, that kind of weird stuff. So it was funny to me that he just wound up kind of being incidentally correct, or like maybe he'd just been playing against Poison all day and he's just in the mode, you know? Like, I know he did play Poison before the finals and beat it in the Swiss, so he was clearly like a little familiar with it. But it was an interesting match to watch. I agree that it was like real close for the Poison player. I thought he was going to win after the first game. Like he played the first game super patiently and like played around everything. And I was sitting from the Delver player's side, so like I knew that the Delver player was just like dead a turn or two early. But he played around like everything and got him for exact C's through everything. Like that was reasonably impressive. And then the other two games were a little more awkward. So Poison's definitely for real for at least another week or so until people are adapting.
What do you think of Inkmoth Nexus and Delver lists to sort of act as a counter to the Poison decks? Because if you pump a Glistener Elf and I block it with an Infect creature, it's dead next turn, right?
Yeah, I think that
And
that's okay.
yeah, it gets in before Moorland Haunt. It's going to be relevant straight away, sort of.
I've played Nexus and Delver a fair bit. I did that at GP Orlando, and I was like kind of happy with it. Jerry hated it, so I think it was like me, Jerry, Todd, and Gindy. And Gindy and Jerry did okay. Todd thought that the Inkmoth Nexuses were just fine, and I thought they were like good, but I was doing a lot of funny stuff with them, so
Yeah.
I don't think Jerry got like anyone with them all day.
Inkmoth with Pike is obviously also
Yeah, that's
sort of exciting.
what we were doing. That was our general idea with that one.
All right.
I have two quick throwback questions, which I will just open to the floor before we move on. My first is, my impression of Infect was that one of the main selling points was that you have a completely, like, massively lopsided matchup against people trying to cast Titans on you. Is that true?
Yes, Wolf Run Rug
Yes.
is like so bad off against that deck.
Okay. That seems fair. And my second question was just a more general question. Do you think as the Infect deck you are more afraid of people trying to interact with your guys through Vapor Snags and Gut Shots, like a Delver style deck, or do you think you are worse off against just like a Naya deck, which is just like play a bunch of blockers? Like which is more scary, do you think?
That's a pretty good question. I think that the way that the Infect deck is set up, you're pretty good against Gut Shots and Vapor Snags as long as you're patient. Like Glenn said, when Nick was winning Game 1, he was super patient because you have cards like Misstep to counteract Snag, Defiance counteracts, Wild Defiance counteracts Gut Shot, and so does like Blessing, counteracts all those cards, stuff like that. So I think if you know what you're doing against Delver, you're able to pick your spots relatively well. Where when you're playing against like some dudes that's just casting a creature every turn, it's like you don't get to pick your spots. You just have to draw the cards and then just hope like you can power through it. So I think I would rather play against like someone like Delver who's trying to be reactive, whereas like these green creature decks and these pod decks are just like, well, I drew Blaze Splicer, so I'm going to cast it. Well, I have an Angel, so I'm going to blink that. And then you have to like power through all that garbage. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thought looking at the list, was that you're actually pretty live against Gut Shots. Like, you have Misstep, Blessing, that enchantment that makes your guy really big, which, like, obviously Cold's Gut Shot against all your guys, plus, like, Mutagenic Growth for free, and then all the pump spells if they somehow let you untap with mana. But if your opponent plays a Blade Splicer, I don't think you can hit them with anything other than, like, huge pump spells plus Rancor or an Inkmoth Nexus, which puts you on like significantly fewer outs to actually kill them if they're just like a first striker, and you're like, oh, that's kind of bad. Like,
I think you can kind of get there with like Ichor Clawmere Rancor in a lot of those spots.
well, you need a
like with a blessing to like get you past the golems because you can't name artifact, right?
If you have Cathedral with Ichor Claw and Rancor, you basically have an unblockable guy because it becomes 4 toughness. Like they can do the block with Blade Splicer and the Golem, but then like they have the potential to just get absolutely destroyed by any card. But like that's trying to assemble 3 cards in a green combo deck. So
I mean, I'm not trying to say I don't think they can ever beat a Blade Splicer, but like suddenly the number of things you have to have seems like it goes up dramatically when they just like play a bunch of guys, and you're like, oh, that's kind of bad. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. But I want to move on. The only other thing that I think was at all semi-interesting in this top 8 was we had the recurrence of the Zombor pod deck which has been floating around for at least a couple months. I actually was looking through like the Moto PTQ like top 16 lists, and there were a couple like going really hard Zombor pod lists. But anyway, we have a sort of standard, I guess, for a Zombor pod list here. I'm just gonna chuck it around, see if anyone has anything fascinating to say about Zombor pod. We are going to go to Glenn first on this. How do you feel about the Zombor podding?
Sure, I like the deck in principle. I think that it gets dismissed a little bit because, you're sort of adding these weird elements to your zombie deck that aren't necessarily on the linear plan of just attacking them to death, but the cards you're adding are actually like really good complements to what you're doing since they can generate so much damage with Blood Artist and Grof's Messenger and clones. Like that stacks up really fast, and it's not a big deal that you don't have a lot of green sources because like every time you lose 2 life, they lose 2 life, and one of you is probably beating the other one up a lot harder. So generally speaking, that should be an acceptable trade. I think Disciple of Bolus is one of the cards that was most interesting to see. It's a card people have been talking about a fair bit. I don't know if I like it. I guess I like it in theory in the deck, but I don't know if 2 is right. It feels like it's kind of situational, and in standard, you don't really have a lot of time to concentrate or whatever. Even when you get to keep some of the creatures, like Messenger comes back obviously, and Gravecrawler sorta comes back, and you extract some value here and there from other things. So I think that Disciple of Bolus is seeing some of his first legs in this archetype, and I'll be curious to see if he keeps going. I know that Brad Nelson has been championing the deck a fair bit. He did on the SCG Live broadcast. Was really excited to see it in the top 8. I also really like its sideboard options. They're pretty adorable. Like Grimgrin is super cute on a scale of 1 to cute. So the card, in case you're not aware, it's like pretty hard for random Titan decks to beat it. It's just a reasonable creature in a lot of the creature mirrors, and it's hard to bonfire and such to get out of the way like that. So it's kind of cool to see a card I think everyone just wrote off. Like no one to my memory has been like, I really wanted to try and get that Grimgrin into my deck, but I just couldn't do it. Well, somebody did it. And I hope to see the deck a little bit more before Birthing Pod rotates, basically, because it's a nice twist on an old favorite, as it were. But other than that, it really is just like kind of a hybridization of 2 ideas, where it's like, well, I have this deck that's really good on turns 1 through like 4. What if I added some stuff that made it good on turn 6?
That's legit.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of Grimgrin in sort of the same scenario where he's just like showing up and killing a huge monster, and you're like, oh, I guess I can't kill him, and I guess he will kill me, which is, yeah, kind of weird. But who's going next? I've got this. Sorry, Cedric, you are going next. How do you feel?
Okay.
Zombors.
I'm going next. So this is an interesting deck. I don't say that negatively or positively. I think it's just interesting. Some of the things that this deck is doing are clearly quite powerful as I'm analyzing the deck list right now. Some of the things I think it's doing are rather ambitious, like having a Massacre Worm in its deck, or splashing a Thragtusk. That Massacre Worm makes me want to die. It's just the most ambitious thing I've seen in a long time. I don't know. Like, Glenn, I know you brought up this point when we were talking about green-white a couple weeks ago, about, like, it had, like, hero, and it had, like, all these cards, but it's not, like, the best hero deck, and it's not the best, like, Strangleroot Geist deck, or best, like, Rancor deck, and I feel like this is kind of the same thing. Like, this isn't the best Birthing Pod deck to me, and I don't know if this is the best take on zombies, like, because, like, I guess this deck can still operate without Birthing Pod, because it still is like a traditional zombie deck, but it's like kind of missing the power of Brimstone Volley and Falconwrath Aristocrat. But like, is this like, if this deck doesn't draw Birthing Pod, is it still good? Like, if it does draw Birthing Pod, excuse me, does it just go from like good to like holy shit, I can't lose? Like the Bant Pod deck that I played, if like Birthing Pod doesn't go unanswered for like 2 turns, the game is just over. Like, does that happen here too? I don't know. I understand all the interactions, and like, you're really doing some really good stuff with like Blood Artist and like Messenger and like free rolling Grave Crawlers and images and stuff. Like, you're doing some really good stuff, but I just don't know if this is like the best home for Birthing Pod, honestly. And also, the thing that kind of scares me is, like, you have 4 woodland cemeteries to be able to activate this thing, and, like, you can, like, make the argument that, like, 2 life isn't that much, but, like, 2 life adds up pretty fast. Like, if it's 3 activations, like, that's 6 life, and if you don't have, like, a life gainer and play, like, Blood Artist or something, you're really, like, punching yourself in the face pretty hard to be able to activate this thing, and that's just not a free roll, so... Which I guess is why the Thragtusk is there. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I think it's interesting. I think it's, like, adorable and ambitious, and... And I don't know if that makes for a good deck or not, or if, like, if someone, like, put some time into, like, trying to make this thing work, if it's going to be good. I just know that I don't like the Massacre Worm, and I don't like the Thragtusk. And I actually am, like, pretty supportive of the idea of Grimgrin, actually.
Me too.
It seems like a lot of decks are just like, well, fuck, I'm dead. Like, to that card. Like, they just can't do anything. Like, it's huge, and it's easy to untap, and it's a 3/3, and then to sacrifice it's going to make it a 4... Oh, it's a 5/5. Oh, my God. That's way big. That's
Dude,
that's
haven't
much
you?
bigger than I thought.
You haven't been playing against that one in Cube? It was in the Moto Cube. They may have taken it out.
It's been a hot minute since I
Never played against it in Moto Cube, not gonna lie.
Jeez. That thing's a 5/5. That thing's
Was it
not getting
playable?
done at all. Like, you know, this deck probably has, like, the same problems as any zombie deck, right? Like, if people are playing Purge or something, or if they want to beat this, they're probably going to be able to beat it. Purge seems like it's on, like, a pretty healthy decline right now, though. Because, like, everyone's moving towards, what is it, Knight of Glory?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, a lot of people are moving towards that card, and, like, I mean, that card's good and stuff, but, I mean, I guess you can kill it with Massacre Worm. Haha. But, yeah, I mean, overall, I think the deck is fine. I don't know if it's good or I don't know if it's bad, but it's absolutely adorable, so.
Steven? Do you have any Zombor Pod thoughts?
I like it. If I were to play zombies, I would play this deck, which is not to say that it's like the best build of zombies, but it's definitely, it looks so much more rewarding to play than like 2/2 creature. Turn 2 go. Take 2. Yeah, I would put Grimgrin main, man, because if I'm gonna play this deck, I'm running with it. Grimgrin plus Gravecrawler, obviously, plus Phyrexian Metamorph on like Geralf's Messenger, get the thing big, take some damage. This deck looks like a lot of fun to play. I guess like the question when it comes down to it, maybe is Birthing Pod actually better reach in any way than Brimstone Volley is? And I suspect the answer is probably no. But it's so much cooler reach than Brimstone Volley is. That's all I have to say about this one.
Alright. I just wanted to mention real quick that there were a couple like slightly different builds of Zombor Pod in just like the top 16 Moto PTQ lists. There was one with 4 copies of, I don't know the name of this card, the like 2-mana 1/1 Nantuko Husk from the most recent core set.
Bloodthorn Vampire.
Yeah, and it came with like Butcher Ghoul, and it just wanted to like get all up in your grill with that and Blood Artist and like just really punch you as quickly as possible, and it had like 3 pods at the top of the curve. And there were a couple other builds that looked like that. So there appear to be a couple directions that people can go with the Zombor Pod.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to... Oh, and I wanted to say in regards to Cedric's best X deck, I think it might be the best Massacre Worm deck. I don't know how many other people are fighting. And it might also be the best Woodland Cemetery deck. I think that's the other one where you can be like, here we
Definitely
come.
the best Grimgrin deck, right?
Yeah, that too.
100%.
So you got to pick your spots for that argument, I think, and fight where you know you got them.
I actually do like Bloodthorn Vampire. I'm very much... Sam Black like wrote an article where he was like, this card's good, why aren't people playing it? And I'm on that page with that card in Zombies, because it does actually seem quite good. You don't have... Like, all of your 2-drops are terrible. So, like, this one that's, like, kind of terrible, but also can do, like, some really insane things, as opposed to, like, Mortar Pod, which is, you know, not very good, and every now and then does some better than average things. Like... That's where I'm at with the... I like the Bloodthorn Vampire. You can really just kill people with that card so often.
First Carrion Feeder, now this. Come on, man.
Why would you want
is like...
more than one creature in play? What would you do with it? Like, you only need one.
Would sacrifice it
That's
to your
why
other
Grimgurn
creature?
is so good.
That's true. That's true.
All
I
right.
remember Sam describing his zombies deck originally as it was not a zombies deck, it was tribal can't block. And like you don't have any creatures, like you kill them all, and none of the ones you have can't block. So
Why would you want to block?
adequate.
Okay. So let's just hit a quick standard roundup to hit anything we've missed. I don't know if we will actually have things to say here, but just in case anyone has any other fascinating standard thoughts, for the standard roundup, Steven, you get to go first. Anything else in standard other than Infect and Zombor Pod you want to talk
I mean,
about?
I can't not say that there are 3 Delver decks in top 8 again. That's like that's all we have to say. Like, oh yeah, yep, still doing this one. Like what we are right now is we're inside this novel where like Delver Secrets is a protagonist, but he's just like not likable. Nobody wants to hear his dialogue, and like yeah, and so we get really excited about the little side character every chapter. Delver's still there.
Glenn, how do you feel? Who would play Delver in your screenplay?
Who would play Delver?
Yeah.
Oh man, I have not given any thought to that one. I don't want to do Delver wrong and
Okay.
say something completely insulting. I mean, he's so heroic, but he's twisted. Maybe Ed Norton. I think.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah, he's haunted, but he's very, he's still firm and powerful as a character. So
Do you think
I think that's good.
do you
A little
think there
gangly too.
would be like curb stomping in this? Because I know that's a thing he's done.
I mean,
So
he's got a wide range. Okay.
yes,
Like,
that is definitely in his range.
proven to have a wide range.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was Delver. It won. This Delver was very similar to the one that won Buffalo too, right? Like white with Talrans.
Yeah.
So we might be seeing that guy's actually good. I don't know. I'm still kind of reluctant. I even asked the guy in the interview. I was like, "So you know Geist, right? Like Talrans? How'd that work out?" Like, I mean, obviously he won, but like, we can cast a Geist and attack, and it seems good too.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't know.
think in fairness, all 3 Delver decks were somewhat different. Like I think at least 2 of them were like low land count decks, but they had different cards in them. Like they were all sort of 18, 19 land pike-ish decks, but they had like different threats to put the pikes on. And one was like no, like 4 augurs, and maybe I'm mixing them up with a PTQ list. Sorry, I just looked at like literally 20 Delver lists in the last hour, so I might be getting them mixed up. But I remember they were different in this event, so I don't know if there is consensus yet.
No.
I don't think there will
feel
ever
like
be a consensus. Like,
yeah, we're not gonna get it.
it's good to have different lists because you are weak to different cards. So why play the same as everyone else? I don't know. I mean, only like 12 of the cards in the list actually matter. You're already at 70% win rate. Just fill in the rest as you like.
I hate you so much. I really do.
I'm
Oh my god.
I'm so firmly against Blade Splicer. Like, I really don't like it in Delver decks, and people are still playing. I know Matthias Hunt actually played it in his Delver deck this weekend. He finished like, I don't know, top 30-ish, like something like that. So, like, I don't like that version. I think like Talrand's better than Blade Splicers, and like I don't like that very much. If you've heard me talk about the cards either, but it just seems so mediocre to try and make these games go long with this card that everyone else is doing better stuff than you with, or like doesn't care that much about, with the exception of zombies, which I consider kind of rancid anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. I agree that we're not going to be seeing a consensus Delver deck anytime soon. Like, people are content to play what they like, and it's hard to figure out what's best when you win a lot of games, even when you're wrong. So.
First world Magic problems. Cedric, do you have any closing standard thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm the fringe guy. I'm the guy who's never going to play the best deck or whatever, so I think Infect is good for like another week. I think if you're playing Nightpod, you should have 4 Bonfires in your main deck. I think if you're playing Bandpod, you're sweet. I think if you're playing Delver, you're a loser. I think Wolf Run Blue is probably pretty good still, actually.
It seems fine. It did like pretty okay at this event, I think. I don't know how many showed up in total, but there were like a goodly number in the top 16. 3, I think.
Yeah. I
Plus
think
like
that deck's still okay.
Yeah.
Don't play trading posts. It's dumb.
we had we had a conversation about goats, which I believe ended in me talking about how I would be removed from the playing hall by judges if I played a trading host deck just because I would scream like goat noises at my opponent until they asked me to leave. I think that's about all that deck is good for, but I'm willing to be proven
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh, yeah. I don't really like 4-mana cards that don't affect the board at all. Sorry. It's just not for me. I don't know. Don't play Mono Black Control either, even though there are some people championing it. It's not good. That's it. I mean, the format's still pretty open. There's still like 6 or 7 like very like good options of decks to play. If there was a gun to my head and someone asked me what the best deck is, I would say Delver. Hope you're happy, Steven.
I didn't even need to get the gun.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, the format's healthy. I still enjoy playing it a lot. I wish I could still play Infect online, but everyone is just coming from all angles to try to beat people playing Infect right now. So I think that Bandpod might be a reasonable choice if you don't want to play Delver right now. So that's about it.
Alright, let's kick it on over to the legacy side of things, where Kobe Spaeth, is that how you pronounce his name? Do you know?
Yep.
Spaeth?
Yep,
Was the victor with a blue-white Mystic deck. I don't know if we want to call it Stoneblade. It's different from the Stoneblade with black version. It's a little closer to Miracles, sort of. But anyway, the big headline there was that there were 4 Mystic decks in the top 8. And the rest of the top 8 was 2 Rug Delver, 1 Lands deck, and 1 Dredge deck. So I would say the biggest story was fully 50% of the top 8 were Mystic decks, and this is after a weekend in which Maverick was the big dog by beating up a bunch of really sad fish. So what do you guys think? Was this, like, did the metagame just swing in a way such that Stoneforge Mystic was the way to go this week? Has there been breaking of it? What happened? And for what happened, we are going to Steven first, I believe. Steven, do you have information about what happened?
Somebody put Counterbalance in their Stoneblade deck, and I think that's awesome. I'm not going to say this is the first time ever or anything. This is not, like, especially breaking ground, I don't think. But, I really like the list that won. The other 3 lists do not have Counterbalance. That's correct, right? I'm pretty sure. I've looked at them multiple times. I keep on looking at them again. Like,
Yeah,
do you have Counterbalance yet? Do you have Counterbalance yet? I just think that Counterbalance in that deck is so cool. Because when I look at Legacy right now, I see a bunch of sort of mopey stuff. They're playing, you know, these okay cards. They have Knights of the Reliquary. Sure, they do various things. They do this, they do that. I don't see anything that's really geared to just straight up kill you. In terms of like aggro scale stuff, I see lots of weird combo stuff that's geared to straight up kill you. Sure. Those exist. So what I want to do in Legacy is make some sort of either control deck that just goes over the top and can answer everything, or try to get under with a real aggro deck, and I have no idea how I would do that. I think that putting Counterbalance in Stoneblade just possibly gives it the best staying power of any deck in the format. I think it's a more sensible fit than Miracles, because I feel like if you get to the point where Counterbalance is great in Miracles, I would really want to have already won if I'm going to be playing blue-white control at that point. So Stoneblade has the early way to like gum up the board and do various things, can interact fairly well in the early turns, and it has Counterbalance out of the board for a matchup that is really good where it wants to take it long. I really love it. Yeah, I'm excited. That's the deck that I would be playing in Legacy right now for sure.
Alright. Glenn, how do you feel about the Day of the Stoneblades?
I like Stoneblade as a deck okay. It's one of the decks that really lets you play a fair bit of Magic, and that's pretty cool, because in Legacy it's kind of hard to always get to do that, but Stoneblade has a pretty diverse range of cards and is playable against a lot of strategies, although some choices might remove your ability to play Magic against, say, lands, for example. But the decks that did well in this particular tournament are interesting because with Maverick doing pretty well in DC, it's a little surprising since Stoneblade historically can play ball against Maverick, but is not really liking the matchup. They've got Thalias, those are really annoying. Once Mother of Runes gets online, all of your paths are dead, and you have to start jumping through a lot of hoops. It makes your Batterskull and Jitte much worse. So you get to play Magic against them, but it's kind of hard, and you have to pick and choose your battles pretty well. Two of the players we saw doing well with it were players who played the deck a lot and are experienced legacy players in Matt Hoey and David Thomas, who played very similar Esper Stoneblade lists. And even going out to the other lists, almost all of them, I don't know if exactly all of them, I'm pretty sure all of them had 2 engineered explosives between their main and sideboard, and then supplemented that with some other kind of sweeper, like either a Wrath of God or some Terminus, or even Perishes and Engineered Plagues were in some sideboards. I know that 16th place was a deck really similar to the deck that won. Stoneblade deck also had Counterbalance, also had Terminus. So those are some interesting choices.
And main.
Yeah, he mained them. Which I don't agree with, but whatever. These are different kind of configurations from conventional Stoneblade, but in a format where you've got Brainstorms and Ponders or whatever, you make 5-card changes and your matchup swings 10% or something. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the idea. And Terminus and Wrath specifically are 2 cards that really can swing the Maverick matchup in particular just completely on its ear. They are not well suited to getting their board swept for 1 or 2 mana if you have to pay for a Thalia, which is much more inefficient to just kill every creature you have. So I found it interesting that the deck did well in the hands of these players. They're also very talented. I know talking to Matt Hoey about why he chose Stoneblade despite, kind of it being a hostile metagame in theory for the deck, he was like, Legacy's a format where people just don't learn the matchups that well. They usually play either the same deck all the time or they play whatever they can get. And if they play the same deck all the time, then, a lot of your choices didn't matter because that's what they were playing regardless of how you metagamed. And then if they're just picking the deck up, they're not going to know the nuances of the matchup. They won't know which cards are key to protect, when they can run something out, when they can't, that sort of thing. And these guys have just played so much Stoneblade, they already know the answer to all those questions. Dave Thomas was actually difficult to cover because he played the deck so fast. And it's not a especially quick deck. He just always knew what he was missing for, always knew how his brainstorm would work, always knew which lands to attack with or when to not attack with them, just all of those elements instantly. And that was pretty fun to watch. It also wound up with him scooping on turn 1 in the semifinals because he knew he was dead. But interestingly, 2 people have done that this year, and the other one was Caleb Durward in St. Louis, which wasn't even that long ago. So I hadn't seen that before, and 2 people have done it in Legacy Open top 8s in the same year. Peculiar. New things every weekend on the Star Sea Games Open Series, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding.
Said, do you have any Stoneforge Mystic related wisdom for us?
Wisdom? That's an interesting word.
Knowledge.
That's an interesting word.
Novel information.
Yeah,
I mean,
helpful information.
How far down would you like me to bring the bar? Just let me know. Should I keep going?
Well, I know you have a very wide vocabulary, so you can if you'd like. I just look at these decks, and I just feel like they don't do anything. And I mean, I went on my combo rant last week, so I'm not going to do that again. But I agree with Steven that, I like Counterbalance a lot in these decks. I'm really surprised that more people aren't playing them because it gives you, something proactive to do. I feel like that's, a soft lock. So instead of just trying to, answer all their stuff, you're just okay, I've, assembled my 2-card combo that, a lot of decks can't beat, versus just, dirtling around with, all of these cards. And I just feel like you're just not doing anything, so much of the game. I'm probably wrong, but I don't know. I hate these decks, more than anything in the world. I just don't feel like they do anything, and I feel like they beat people because people don't understand what's important in the matchups, or, they run their crap in a Terminus, or they fight over the wrong cards, or, lead with the wrong spells and get them countered, and it's just... I really just don't get it. I understand that, this deck has a lot of powerful cards in it, Swords, Force, Jace, Mystic plus Batterskull, top. The cards are good, but I just don't think that, these decks are that difficult to beat if you're, ordering your spells correctly, or you know what's important and you know what's important to fight over. But I'm probably wrong. This is just not the angle of attack I would ever take to, like, a Legacy tournament. Like, if this deck is popular, then I'm just going to sleeve up, like, Goblin Lackey and just destroy these people. Because, like, they can't overcome, like, a Ringleader, or, like, a Matron for a Ringleader, or, like, a Vial. But, I don't know, it's fine. Like, I understand, like, why these decks win, because, like, the more skilled people who play them, like, beat, like, the lesser people that are playing, like, bad decks, like, mediocre decks, or something, or, like, you know, like, they'll clean up on the people that are playing Maverick and stuff like that. But, ugh, I just, like, look at these deck lists, I just want to throw up. It's, like, just awful to say, but, like, it just, like, has, like, all these, like, random cards in it, like, a Counterspell, and just, like, a Vindicate, like, this list that I'm looking at right now. It's just, like, all these cards that just make me want to just kill myself. I just don't get it. Like, and the thing is, like, I know that, like, Matt Hoey, Glenn, I know you've covered him a lot. He's really good, right?
He's fine. He's one of the up and comers, I would say. Like, you know, not gonna win a Pro Tour anytime, especially soon, probably. Although, you know, if he does that, then I guess I look like a total idiot. But whatever.
That's
Also
fair.
a jerk. But yeah, no, he is good.
Good.
He used to write for TCG Player, and I was surprised because the articles were better than I really like expected coming in. He had a lot of things to say. He learns the decks he plays like really well. So yeah, he's one of those good guys in the Chicago area. Yeah.
Because I know, like, you see it, like, I know he's won an Open, and, you know, like, I see him in the top 8 a lot. Like, I'm familiar with his name, and I've never met the guy before. So, like, it's pretty clear to me that he knows what he's doing. Dave Thomas knows what he's doing, especially, like, with these particular archetypes. And, you know, then they're probably just, like, outplaying people just because, like I said, like, the people, their opponents don't know, like, what cards are important, how to go about, like, fighting them, maybe running into Terminus, stuff like that. And, like, these lists are always going to be different. Like, some people are going to have balance, some people aren't, that sort of thing. I don't know. I just don't love the deck. I just don't like I don't like its angle of attack for Legacy, but that's just me. I mean, you guys know the kind of decks that I play. You would have to pay me a significant amount of money to ever play a deck like this.
Yeah,
So.
I would not put you on the top balance Terminus plan if I had to guess blind.
Yeah, if you're playing me in a tournament, it's pretty safe to see that I'm not going to be playing this sort of deck ever. So.
Do you think in the tournament he flipped Terminus to counterspell a 6 casting cost spell at any point?
I would really like it if that happened.
That was like that was one of the
Someday.
reasons I didn't like the 16th place deck because it has like counterbalance and Terminus main, and that's just like ugh.
Right, yeah.
Alright, the next topic I want to hit is the lands deck, and what I personally would view as a failure on the part of all other Legacy Open competitors to allow a lands deck into an untimed top 8. So, obviously this is a situation in which we get like 45 minutes per game of the casters trying to figure out which player is going to deck if everyone gets all of their lands wastelanded. So how do you guys feel about the lands deck in general and its path through the top 8? We're going to go to Cedric first, I believe. Looks like,
Okay.
yeah, we have Cedric. Cedric first. I know you've played some lands in your day. How do you feel about...
I've played some lands in my day. I've split a cash tournament or two with it. This is a deck I can actually talk about instead of trying to make up things to talk about Esper Stoneblade. I'm really glad that, like, lands is, like, kind of back on the radar and stuff, actually. I don't particularly like this gentleman's list, like, at all, just because I don't think he has enough lands in his deck. I think he's trying to do just these adorable things with Enlightened Tutor and Cursed Totem and Crucible of Worlds in your Life from the Loam deck. Why is Crucible Worlds in your deck? You have 4 Life from the Loams. It doesn't make any sense. But, like, overall, I think that Lance is, like, a pretty good deck, as long as there's, like, no surgical extractions floating around or any extirpates or stuff like that. Then it's actually pretty good, because, like, you can fight through, like Relic and Crypt with, like, a cycling card and be able to get it back and do some bobbing and weaving, that sort of thing. I guess you can fight through surgical, too, but, I mean, it's, like, a little bit more difficult if they, like, time it correctly, whereas you can pretty easily fight through those particular artifact cards. I think that this list, as I said, should just have more lands in it. Like, if you remember, like, lands, you know, a couple years ago, it was called 43 because it played 43 lands. And then it played, like, 4 loams, like, some mana bonds, some explorations, some versions, like, the early versions had mulch, Some versions had Gamble to be able to find loams, so then you were playing 8 loams or like Burning Wish or something. Whereas this one just has like this really cute stuff and like Academy Ruins to potentially get those cards back, and it's just like I don't understand why you need those cards to beat your opponent when you can just like lock them out of the games with lands and then kill them with like factories and ports and like Barbarian Ring and stuff. So, long story short, I like the deck. I don't know like how well positioned it is. Like, can this deck beat a Gristlebrand? Anyone have an opinion on that?
I mean,
It can
maybe.
it's not gonna die to the Gristlebrand. If they can't do anything else, you can just be like Maze of Ith.
Okay.
Yeah, like Reanimator's gonna need their backup dude, like whatever it is, Tidespout Tyrant or Angel of Despair. Like they'll need that to actually kill you. Show and Tell or whatever can probably manage to get you, especially if they have like sneaks and whatnot.
I'm pretty sure that the land deck can like never beat Emrakul. Just because like Maze doesn't do
Maze
doesn't do
of
anything.
Untap it. Suck it.
Yeah. So I know that this deck can't beat that card, but like that card's like kind of fallen out of favor because like Sneak and Show is a little bit on the decline. I would assume that like a deck like this beats the living hell out of Maverick, because like who cares what they're doing? Nice big creatures or whatever. Like Ooze is good, but they only have so much green mana to put into Ooze every turn, and you're just going on steroids with loam and cycling. So it's it's fine. It's pretty good. Like a metagame of like Merfolk, Rug, Maverick, and then like no Emrakruls, and like pretty good against Esper Stoneblades X that don't have balance, because like then you don't have to worry about getting locked every turn. Whereas like if they have the balance lock, your deck doesn't do anything. But I don't know. It's okay. I don't hate it. I just know for sure I don't like his deck list. That's all I know for sure.
Alrighty. Steven, do you have any land-related comments?
Quarterfinals, semifinals. I think it was the quarterfinals. We watched a very long, very prison-ish sort of game out of lands where the guy put a chalice on 1 and on 2.
That was
And so this is against Rug Delver. So Rug Delver can now cast Force of Will and Green Sun Zenith. And that is all. And lands itself can cast almost no spells. Obviously, he's locked himself out of Life from the Loam, so he's now on like Crucible. He has an Ensnaring Bridge in play. It was a very, very long game. Like, I don't know, 20 plus turns, I imagine.
Yeah.
I really like games of Magic like that. Like, I really do. It's a fascinating game. I have like a page of notes written out about it where I was looking through the deck list and I'm like, well, the Scavenging Ooze is in play, so you need like the green sources and this and this and this and that, this and this and that, and like eventually it boils down. Like the cool thing about a game state like this is you can actually solve it, and it boils down to the lands player is going to waste all of the green sources in the Rug Delver list every time. Scavenging Ooze is going to stop working when the lands player kills him. I guess what I want to like express about that game is the players played every turn in like 5 seconds. And I felt like the Rug player was just sort of autopiloting, like he didn't think he could win, but he wanted to keep playing or something. There's a real chance he can win that game if like, I don't know, the bottom 3 cards of the deck are Wastelands out of the lands player and he decks before he manages to shut out the green sources. There's actually a real chance, and you can solve it. So it made me like start thinking about how people are actually playing, how people are actually thinking about Magic. It seems like they were not. It seems like they were not thinking about Magic. So like, I don't know. I want to like plead with you guys when you're in a situation like that. That's awesome. Like a 20 plus turn game. That's like in StarCraft, those are the games that everyone, like it always ends with something epic. It's like the hour-long game. Somebody like does a vortex and motherships, and StarCraft is a game. If you don't know what I'm talking about, get out. There should be, once you get that chalice on 2, there should be a moment of absolute terror for the players and for the commentators. Well, for the guy who cast the chalice on 2, he should probably already know beforehand. But for the Rug player, it should be a moment of terror where he's like, okay, well, I've seen his 75 cards. I don't know how he sideboarded, but at this point, I should be able to work out exactly how every turn for the rest of the game is going to look and what the variables are and play everything perfectly. And if I were him, I would have like maybe gone to the bathroom or something. I'm not sure if that's allowed, but I would have thought for as long as the judge could possibly let me to try to work out the game, and I would have played it like as well as possible. The question of what the rug player does with his wastelands there is really interesting. Do you wasteland Creeping Tar Pit? Creeping Tar Pit is a win condition and gets through your creatures, but it turns out it's absolutely irrelevant because your creatures are all going to be gone because your green sources are gone, and then Tabernacle comes down and he's recurring wastelands till all of your other lands are gone. So you don't do that. By the way, guys, I think you're meant to wasteland his wastelands if he plays them, even though he gets a green source out of you in response, because you get to remove his wasteland from the game. He never gets it back, even with Crucible in play. And that's like your only out for like the last few wastelands to be on the bottom of his deck and then never to lock you out of green. But I don't really know. Maybe you're meant to play to like, maybe he'll screw up. You're meant to play towards that. Like, maybe you waste his Academy runes because you think he'll just mess something up somewhere. Maybe you like, no, I don't think you can do that. Maybe you like hold it for a Tabernacle and like he lays the Tabernacle while you have green sources in play for some reason and you just like manage to get through that way. I think if you can get rid of his Tabernacle and his Creeping Tar Pit with creatures in play, you can deck him. Is Academy Ruin still there? You might need all 3 Wastelands, because the rug player only had 3 Wastelands. But it was like this insane situation, so complex, and just disappointed me so much that the players were like playing in 5 seconds, and the commentators were like, well, looks like the land player won this one. And they had this big conversation about like, well, I mean, I guess it's better not to scoop when it's clear that you've lost, but like, I don't know. Have you ever won from a situation like this? I don't know. I would love to watch that game again, and yeah, it got me excited. Untimed rounds with lands are sweet, man. They're sweet.
I'm glad that there is a target audience. I was not previously aware.
You guys have to get excited about this stuff. This is Magic. This is like the game you play. All 75 cards, both lists. You know them. Get out.
It is my line of work. I should be more excited. You're correct.
Glenn, do you have any land-related thoughts?
Yeah, actually, well, first off, to those criticizing lands and the time, I was in the hotel elevator at like 11 p.m. on the night of a Legacy Open. That's real nice for me. Like, I stay and, help pick up and put all the event cleanup and all that stuff, so getting out at 11 means that tournament ran real quick. So if that guy was playing slow, he didn't do it when it counted, I guess.
Well,
talking to him after the quarterfinals, or maybe it was the quarterfinals where that game transpired. He actually he seemed relatively experienced with the deck. I know that we saw him make a couple slip-ups just in the top 8. Like he forgot to pay for a Tabernacle on Thalia in one game, and someone was IMing me stuff that he may or may not have been forgetting during the match as well. But he seemed relatively experienced with lands itself, and was already thinking about all those plans you're talking about. After the match, he was so excited. He's telling people, he's like, yeah, if he does this, I was going to do this. I mean, he does this, I had to figure out how to do this, and then I was going to do this, and then there were a lot of thises and various actual things. So that was cool, and I appreciate that also very much. I think certainty, trying to achieve actual certainty in a game of Magic is a very cool thing to do. You do not get to do it very often because the game is pretty naturally variance-based, obviously. But it comes up where there are just moments when you're building the game to a point where you know exactly what's going to happen. You know they'll have nothing. Those are some of the most fun moments in any game. I got to experience it earlier this year playing WoW TCG because that game has 30 card limited decks and a lot of cards that put things on the bottom of your deck. So you can get into the end game where you actually know what 8 cards are left in both of your decks a fair amount of the time, and you have to guess how they ordered them or whatever. So that's a very good part of that game, and rewards people who pay attention and destroys people who don't. And it doesn't come up very often in Magic for a lot of reasons. The decks are larger, and the format's more complex and stuff like that. But I agree that that was a very interesting situation. Like I remember hearing about the game, and I was a little disappointed because I didn't feel like we went as deep in commentating it as we could have. But it's also like super awkward that that game happened on like Sunday at 10 p.m. instead of like Saturday at 4 p.m. or something, because it's so hard to like actually process everything when you've been going just all weekend long. And yeah, it was just a cool game. I think the top eight in general was like pretty interesting to watch for me personally. I got to watch like a Stoneblade mirror that was pretty tough. Like Dave Thomas had to fight like a a Jace and like hardcast Force of Wills when he was on 2 lands and stuff like that. So there was just a lot of really tight play going on in that top eight that was fun to watch, including the lands player for the most part.
All right. I want to move quickly from lands to sort of vaguely land related. I know that traditionally lands is not at its strongest when fighting ritual decks that are trying to kill you with non-creature based strategies, because you sort of sit there with Maze of Iths and Glacial Chasms and then they brain freeze you for your whole library or something like that. And there were not only a dredge deck, which I personally would classify as sort of a combo deck, but also 2 Ant/Storm decks in the top 16 and a High Tide. So I just wanted to know if you guys had any super quick thoughts on sort of the results of combo in that event. We are going to Glenn first, I believe. Yes, Glenn, how do you feel? Combo, lands, interactions, etc.
Yeah, I have a friend at Star City, Matt Gargiulo, who plays like a lot of lands. It's his favorite deck ever, and he's regales us with the tales of what you can and can't beat, how you can and can't beat it. And whenever I ask him for a deck to play, he always says lands. And I obviously have never said yes to that question because I just don't want to play lands. But I can respect the deck, and combo and approaching the combo matchups is definitely like very key. Obviously, this guy boarded like 4 Chalice of the Voids, which are super essential to being able to overcome all those the combo decks. At least some of them, like specifically Storm is like the one that's especially good against. Although if someone decided to play like Ascension or something, I guess you might be able to get them too. And combo did reasonably well at this event, but not great. There weren't a lot of them in the room. Like walking around the room, I saw a few show and tell decks, a few dredge decks, and a few storm decks, but probably about like no more than 5 pilots for any of those archetypes, I would wager. And that's a good field to be playing a deck like lands in when you're just trying to beat up on these dummies with their Stoneblades. And the Stoneblade players have a pretty reasonable matchup against combo, I think, especially like the ones playing black because they get the discard and disruption, which is much harder. I know Matthias Hunt was playing High Tide in Legacy, and he found himself like paired against a Merfolk deck that was splashing for Thought Seizes. So like it was just these were the kinds of crazy things people were doing against combo out in Kansas City, I guess.
Sure. Whatever it
But
takes, right?
it was timely that Storm was one of the better performing combo decks of the weekend after Cedric so kindly pointed us in its direction. So I expect we'll continue to see it doing well, probably. I mean, if people are going to learn how to play it, and especially if the fields start going more towards the decks that are adapted to beat Maverick rather than Storm, because that's like, I can't imagine 2 more polar opposites in the Legacy metagame, right? Like, you walk into a room and want to try and beat Maverick versus Storm, like.
Dread of Night, how's this taste?
Saw you coming a mile away, buddy.
Sed, do you have any combo related thoughts, possibly related to lands, possibly not?
Me? Combo? Storm? No.
I don't
I
know.
don't have anything to say about that.
A dunce on the topic.
I heard big talk, and then I saw these tweets about non-storm decks that you were playing this weekend.
Yeah, all right.
That.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. You can call me out in front of a live audience. I'll defend myself. If you've watched me play Storm on my stream, I'm fucking stupid.
That's fair. All right, I can respect that.
There's an MOCS next week, or this week actually. It's on Saturday, and I don't have enough time to learn Storm in time for that tournament. I would like to play it at the Invitational, but being realistic and honest with myself, I'm not going to have enough time to learn it because it's just mind-numbingly difficult. And we've talked about Storm for almost every episode of this show now, and obviously you guys know my opinions on it. If you learn it and harness it, you are going to be like an unstoppable force in a Legacy tournament. But that takes time. You know, there are some decks that you can learn, like Merfolk or Rug or something, in like 2 or 3 days of testing, and then you've got a pretty good idea of what you need to do against whatever matchups you're in and how to brainstorm and ponder. With this deck, sweet God, I have no idea. And I'm still figuring it out. And I really want to. Like, I'm really accepting the challenge. But for the MLCS, I just don't think it's going to give me the best opportunity to win. So I'm going to be playing a different deck. I'm really happy to see that Storm did well in the Legacy Open. I think it should. That's part of the reason I went on the rant. Is just because I think it should be a deck that has accomplishments along with a bunch of other combo decks. Just the power level of those decks are too high, but I feel like they lose a lot because of pilot error. And if there is no pilot error, that's Game Boys. So I like it. I'm not terribly surprised by it either. You know, I think like these Maverick decks are like pretty good, but like if you don't see a Maverick deck in the top 8, are you like really surprised? You like bring up the results, you're like, whoa, no Maverick? What's going on? Like you have that reaction if there's like no Delver. You shouldn't have that reaction if there's no Savannahs in the top 8. So I think that, you know, what Storm has done and like these other things are going to start becoming the norm.
Steven, you have any combo thoughts?
Like my thoughts about combo and Legacy. I've been thinking about it a little bit because Cedric gave me some thinking points last week. I just don't know why I would play it. I don't really like, if I imagine how I would build Blue-White Stoneblade to like beat up on combo. We go over here and just click on the first place list real quick because like, okay, so we've got like 4 Force of Will, 2 Counterspell, 2 Vendilion Click, and we have the counterbalances. 4 counterbalances. Oh, and like Pyroblasts and Surgical Extractions, those I don't even know. But I feel like if you show up to one of these tournaments with Storm, like the reason I would be doing it is I'm saying like, you guys are not prepared for Storm. You are not like making the sacrifices you need to make to beat this combo deck. But then when I look at the deck lists in this Legacy tournament, almost all of them have 4 Force of Will, and there are tons of other cards which are there because the pilots want to beat Storm. As far as I can tell, like they're terrible in tons and tons of matches. They're there for the combo decks. If I were to play Legacy, I would be playing a deck. Like, I would play something like Blue-White Stoneblade. I would actually be taking stuff like Force of Will out of the deck and just accepting that I lose to Storm. Because I think that the people who are trying to play Storm in these tournaments are going to lose to people playing suboptimal cards for other matchups, which are there because they want to be able to beat Storm. So they'll beat the Storm decks for me, and then I'll beat up on them with my like crazily aggressive, irresponsible looking deck with no Force of Will and Legacy. But I mean, if you're not willing to lose a matchup before it starts, you're not going to win many matchups before the start either. And that's just how I'm feeling. I don't see the reason for playing combo because I don't see the people with their pants down waiting to lose the combo. I think everybody's there playing their Thalias and Force of Wills.
I think that's totally fair, and I think that's also a thing that's happened in the past. Like, we've seen people cut forces from decks, like in that one Legacy GP with the like forceless or semi-forceless Bant list that did really well. I don't know if you guys remember what I'm talking about, but I think that's a thing that has happened and a thing that's totally reasonable. I want to move on real quick. Just the last thing I want to touch on before we move on from the Star City completely was I felt that in general, and I didn't watch the whole thing, that the level of play in KC was a little bit lower than perhaps we have been used to. Again, I mean, it's a long day of playing Magic in a tournament, and everyone makes mistakes. But I thought the stream was a little bit gross at times. I wanted to see if anyone felt similarly / had any particular things that they thought were enlightening to point out. Steven, you get to go first on this topic, if memory serves. Did you see anything in particular? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts?
I do not disagree even a little bit. The thing I think is interesting about this, though, is we have like very, very quickly created this amazing infrastructure where we're broadcasting Magic tournaments every weekend. And I sort of like, I don't know how. How did you guys do that? Glenn, were you involved in that? Like what happened there? Because all of a sudden there are all these people on the TV set playing the Magic the Gathering. And like if you look at a sport like golf, because like the Masters were on over the weekend too. I think it was the Masters, whatever. These guys are getting paid like millions of dollars flying around the world playing golf. They have all these sponsorships. They have all this stuff, and they get the viewers. And there's a tournament on, you know, most weekends. Probably less tournaments on TV than Magic tournaments, honestly. Whereas if you look at these like Magic players, a lot of them are just like guys from the shop down the street. Showed up with my 43 lands deck. You know, found my combo elves in the attic. I think we talked about that a bit on earlier episodes. You're not going to see, like, the best players in the world playing Magic every round on stream because the infrastructure is actually ahead of the players in Magic. And I think that's really cool. There's a giant void that's, I think, we have to grow into. And a lot of it is Star City Games is, like, fault. Like, if you see people playing terrible Magic on stream, that is an amazing thing for Magic because it means that if you can play Magic decently well, you can go to a tournament, they're on every weekend, and you have a chance to like get on stream, you have thousands of people watching you, and there's prize support right there. So I actually like, I see these people make mistakes, and I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty happy about the whole situation.
All right.
That is the most interesting approach I've heard.
It's an approach. Yeah, it's always a long day. I do kind of feel like there are weekends that are worse than others. You know, sometimes we see like a pretty good weekend filled with a lot of tight plays, see like an average one. This one, like, it wasn't necessarily the quantity of mistakes. I guess I didn't feel like there were an overabundance in number, but like the ones that I was actually watching were just like total head thumpers a lot of the time. It's like, what? Like just the wrong land. People played the wrong lands so many more times than usual, and that's like that happens. Like that's actually a mistake, especially in Legacy. That's like kind of common, but you know, like caverning for the wrong creature type and stuff like that. That shouldn't be happening in Standard a lot of the time. It's like if you look at your hand and then after you play your cavern, you can't cast some of the cards, then that was probably wrong. Like it's not good. Like so that was very awkward. I hope in future tournaments, Kansas City players, you know, step it up a little, bring the heat, as it were. I do agree that, you know, there's something to be said for this. It's very much, you know, an average Joe's kind of circuit. You know, this isn't the Pro Tour. People criticize the play a lot on those grounds on Twitter. You know, they're like, yeah, what is this guy doing here? What? And it's like, well, he's playing Magic, bro. It's a weekend. Like, we came to his town and we ran a tournament. Like, what did you do Friday? Like, did you play an FNM? Like, because it was in your town and you wanted to play Magic? Like, that's what's happening, you know? These are not the Pro Tour. Like, there are reasons that these players aren't on the Pro Tour. And, you know, some of them are, obviously. It's nice to see them. And when they play especially well, it can be really exciting. Like, obviously, we're always pumped to see, you know, Caleb Durward win an Open. Like, when Jerry does well, that's always nice. When Brad continues to fail, that's fun. So, like, we can have both. You know, it's not that every Magic tournament and every Magic player needs to be judged by like the high standard. I don't want to say impossibly high. That's obviously like the wrong term because it's clearly very possible to be that good at Magic. But you know, that's not why a lot of those people are there. We see people top 8 with that random Rogue Brew and everyone's like, oh man, is this deck maybe good? And it's like, I mean, maybe. More likely that guy just probably ran really well while a bunch of his opponents made mistakes like for a lot of the day. And sometimes that happens. Like, it doesn't happen very often at Pro Tours because you have to run really well and the best players in the world have to be making these mistakes. Like, they're not going to do that. But it's every weekend you're running a tournament with like the vast majority, I would guess probably like easily 70+%, probably closer to 80% of like every tournament field is just the people who lived within 2 hours of that site and wanted to play Magic that weekend. And there are people who will travel a lot. Like Matt Hoey, I know he said it was like 10 hours or something for him to get to Kansas City. And that's dedication. Like, I'm I've driven a long way to play in a Magic tournament, but I have not yet driven 10 hours, so kudos to him. Obviously, it worked out pretty well. But that's pretty much, that's like the nature of play in these events. It's not so much, it's not even that it's like unreasonable or unfair to judge the players on the merits of seeing like Pro Tour caliber competition. It's that it's like pointless. Like, why would you do it? It's irrelevant. There's, you can yell at these players for like 5 years, and 5 years later you still have like pretty much the exact same class of player. Like, some people have moved on, some people have moved up, some people have just left Magic. Like, these are where these tournaments are geared towards. They're the players who are showing up.
Alrighty. Seth, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've got something to add. It's not so much on like the caliber, like the level of play at the tournament, because I didn't get to watch because I was really busy this weekend. But I think that part of what kind of leads to that level of play is that people don't put themselves in high pressure situations enough. And what I mean by that is something that I've always done when I like started playing Magic and have done throughout my far too long of a career playing Magic is like I'll never split ever for like any reason. Like I don't want to split the winnings. If it's like the finals 1-8-4, I don't want to split like 6-6 and then like someone gets the point. I just don't split ever because like I want to get myself in the situation where I know how my mind and my body is going to react when I'm in a high pressure situation. So if it's like in the finals of a PTQ or like not even, it doesn't have to be in the finals. It has to be like the top 8 of a PTQ when like it gets like pretty serious. Like I want to be in a position where like I know like what it takes to win. So like when you're on camera and you're like in like a high pressure situation, it's not unfamiliar to you what you need to do in that situation. So I think like a lot of the players who play in these particular tournaments don't like they're not in those situations that much. Like they'll play like their FNM and they'll like split the finals, or like they'll go to their box tournament and then they'll like split the finals or whatever, and then just go home. Where like, and then like when they're on camera, they're like nervous and they're not like used to being like a high pressure situation or know what to do or that sort of thing. And I think like that's like if your goals are to be like relatively good at Magic, maybe move yourself up like circuits or play on the Pro Tour stuff, I think it's like pretty detrimental to your game. And I think that like when you're watching like these newer players be on camera, like I think that's part of the reason that they make mistakes is because they are nervous and they're not used to being in those high pressure situations. And this is a way for them to learn and get used to being in those situations, which I think is important for like people who want to be good and that sort of thing. But I think that's what leads to a lot of like the poor play. Like yes, some people are just not as good as other people at Magic and that sort of thing, but I think there's just a lot more that goes into it besides like this guy sucks at Magic. I just don't think that people are in the situations enough for them to have the opportunity to be good. So that's all.
All right, fair enough. I'm gonna like slightly delay what I'm gonna say because I think it links very closely with the next topic I'm gonna get into, and I think this is gonna be probably our last topic for today. But returning to the topic of Magic coverage, sort of in the universe. We touched on it a little bit last episode, but we had to sort of bail out at the end because we had audio problems, communications were going down. We sort of entered full flame out at the 2-hour mark, but we are returning to the topic of Magic coverage. And what I wanted to talk about was what each cast member individually is looking for in terms of Magic coverage, like what you as a person are looking to get out of each Magic broadcast. And I know that for myself, because I'm kind of a weirdo, and I think this is not necessarily what everyone else is looking to get, but when I'm looking at Magic coverage, largely what I want to see are people taking correct and interesting lines of play, which are going to make me think about the optimal way to play a given situation, and the way that you can play a game to offer your opponent the lowest chance to beat you, basically, or offer yourself the highest chance to win. And I feel like when people are making mistakes, not necessarily like really huge mistakes, but just I saw stuff where people would like tap colored lands and leave glimmer posts up when they're casting spells, and it's like there's no reason to ever do that. It's not like a huge mistake, but it's just like something which is it's never right, and they're just like doing that stuff constantly. Like that makes me really angry because I'm kind of a lunatic. But like when I watch a Magic stream and every turn people are just like tapping their lands wrong, I'm like, well, why am I watching this? Like, I don't want to watch people mistap their lands every turn and do stuff like that. So that actually really bothers me. But I think there are probably a very large segment of the population that could not possibly care less. So I'm interested to hear like what you guys are looking for when you're watching a Magic broadcast. Cedric, I believe we have you going first on this. What are you looking for?
Um, that's a really good question, actually. To be completely honest with you, I wish I had like a really really good answer, but I think it kind of varies from like match to match from what I'm looking for. You know, sometimes I'm looking for like an interesting deck. Sometimes I'm looking for like really tight play. Um, sometimes I'm watching to see someone accomplish their goal. Um, you know, if there's someone there who needs to get X amount of points for a particular tournament, I think it's kind of fun to watch the chase and see if they can get there because I've been in that position before. Um, you know, more than anything, for me, I just want like, you know, if people play well or they play poorly or you know they tap their mana wrong or something like that, that doesn't bother me as much as it probably bothers you. But I mean, we're all bothered by different things. I just want to see whatever. Someone says we want to see goat noises. Sorry for that. I think the thing that I want to see most besides goat noises is I just want to see a well done broadcast. More first and foremost, I think is the thing that's most important to me. Um, you know, you can't control what the players are going to do. You can't control the decks they're going to play and that sort of thing. But for me, I just want to see like a really well done broadcast where like the people behind the scenes know what they're doing. The people who are on the cameras are educational and informative, and everything kind of just works on all cylinders. And like the reason I say that, it's kind of like a comparison because I'm a restaurant guy, is, you know, for me, I want, when you're at a restaurant and everything kicks on all cylinders, the service is good, you know, everything is done well, and then like the food is like not that great, but it's like, fine, but like it's still like a memorable experience because everything outside of what you went there for was done really, really well. So it's like that's important to you. Like we watch Magic to watch Magic, and you know it may not be like the best Magic we get to see, but you know we understand that going in. But if everything else that is happening around it is done well, then I think it's super watchable. And so when I just watch a broadcast, I try not to pick people apart too much, but you guys know that I have my moments. But I just want to see just like a well done broadcast. Just, you know, it looks good. People know what they're doing behind the scenes. You know, and when you watch like StarCraft, I know some of the people in the chat watch StarCraft. Steven, I think you do. Adam, I think you do.
Cedric,
Oh,
stop.
I watch everything.
My brother, my youngest brother, 17 years old, just played in the Oceania Regionals over the weekend, and he lost in the quarters, but he got a game commentated by Artosis. Tasteless was on break.
Ooh.
And Tasteless and Artosis said it was like the best game that they had commentated. Like it was awesome to watch. You guys should check that out if you like StarCraft. Brother.
Should tell us.
Thanks for cutting me off,
Continue,
buddy.
Cedric.
I
Continue.
appreciate
Shameless. Shameless. Continue.
But if Steven, apparently you do watch StarCraft. That's good. If you watch StarCraft, like just like their production value and just like their commentators and just everything they do is just like super well done. And I don't know a fucking thing about StarCraft. Like I just watch it because it's like pretty cool, and I used to play StarCraft Brood War. But when I'm watching like these streams, and I watch a lot of them at night now before I go to sleep just to see what's going on in that world, it's just really well done. And I don't even understand what's going on in the games, but like everything looks good, and you can tell like that the commentators know what they're doing, and just everything just looks beautiful. And I don't know, I just like it. Just looking at it, I just like it. And maybe I'm like a child and I like bright lights and big objects and stuff, but I like that's what I want to see when I'm like tuning into something. Something just like that's really well done. Like if you watch the NFL Red Zone is really well done. I like stuff like that. So that's kind of what I look for in a broadcast, personally. You know, if I make mistakes all the time, so I'm not very judgmental on if someone makes like an egregious error because I'm not perfect at all. But if things are really well done, I'm probably going to be satisfied.
Fair enough. Steven, I think we touched like a little bit on what you were looking for, but I'll let you rehash, or maybe you have some new stuff. I don't know. Steven, give us your wisdom.
The screen zooms in. The Lambs player has cast Chalice on 2, and coverage slows to 1/5 regular speed. We cut to a picture-in-picture window of John Nash, famous economist, and Kahneman, the author of Thinking Fast and Slow, a great book if you haven't read it, discussing in detail the implications of every action, the web. Like, Nash is, if you've seen A Beautiful Mind, I'm talking about the guy in A Beautiful Mind, and he's like in his shed where he goes crazy and thinks he's hunting Nazis or whatever he does, and like has just paper everywhere, string everywhere. Like, there is wasteland on the wall and is connected by like 17 strings of different things. And yeah, we continue on this for like 8 hours. And then we leave, and Glenn Jones is sitting in the booth. Glenn Jones, sorry. And he like just lets me know, like, oh yeah, this deck won, just by the way, and this guy won the tournament. This was the prizes. Thanks for tuning in. That's about what I'm looking for.
Yeah, where in
Not
God's
quite
name are we going with this?
I think
Adam asked me a question.
that's what they have scheduled for next week. So you should be in luck.
Thank God.
So Glenn, what do you want?
It's obviously like a pretty interesting question for me because I'm not a coverage watcher so much. I research coverage from time to time, I would call it, because I'm always looking at the people we're competing with, the people we'd like to emulate, that kind of thing. So I'm more looking for things that make coverage profitable for me on a personal and professional level versus necessarily enjoyable, since I don't really watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it a very kind of different concept. It means that I really appreciate things like production value, which is what Cedric was talking about. And that's been very rewarding to be a part of with Star City Games at large, not to mention just SCG Live in particular. If you were there in the early days of SCG Live, like, it's night and day, like what we're doing now. Like, we have a broadcast with, an actual layout and like commercials and cuts to and fro across the screen, and have figured out how to display things. We have a clock. Like, I don't think anyone else even has a clock yet. And that took us a pretty long time to figure out how to make it work. And our designs are way better. Like, we learned how to actually use the space on the screen, which might sound dumb. Like, a lot of people, have a very intuitive sense of exactly where to put everything, or like how much space you should dedicate to what kinds of things. But when you're building this product with a lot of different voices in the room, it takes time. It takes a lot of different stuff to know where you wind up. I think we have a really great layout now, which I can credit our graphic designers, Liz Nugent and Kristen Pleskow with. It's really sweet looking. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh man, this is like, I feel like a buffoon for everything I've done before. And it's been emulated a lot. We've seen it, pulled and recolored for other people's various broadcasts, which is really cool to see. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery on that one for sure. Stuff like face cams, which Rashad Miller, when he was working with us, originally developed. All these small developments just keep adding up to make a better and better broadcast. At the end of the day, like, the big limitations are definitely like budget and technology. You're right, Stephen, when you say that Magic lacks the audience and the players for its infrastructure. Like, people want to watch it, but not quite enough people, and people want to play it, but they're not quite good enough, or not quite interesting enough, or marketable enough, or all of these other things, because there are elements in all of those sports that are missing from Magic. Not like actual gaming elements, although you could make that argument. It's just kind of an irrelevant argument to make for what I'm talking about, but like marketing, advertising, like those kind of elements are really different. So that means there's new ground for Magic to explore more than old ground, because you're not going to just overnight turn into like ESPN. We look at ESPN and we pull a lot of ideas from them, but that's just not where you can end up at this juncture. Like, that's a decade away or something like that, realistically speaking. I think the coolest part about Magic coverage right now, and the part that I'm interested in continuing to expand, is the interactive element. Magic has a pretty strong community on Twitter. Like, it's not as large as some communities, but it's very active. And during SCG weekends, it varies between being, relatively active and really active, which is very rewarding to interact with. They've caught things, like obviously we've caught, misplays or like illegal things, the occasional potential cheater as a result of Twitter interaction. And they also give us fun stuff like debating what qualifies the size of a wolf pack was one of our popular Twitter debates this weekend. So that's the element that I currently have tried to explore. There are a lot of programs and software that's really expensive that I would like to incorporate into our coverage, but we're not quite there on that. And our technology continues to improve, buying new cameras, buying new cables, so on and so on and so forth. Those are all elements that will just improve over time. And it's kind of frustrating, and I can get that for people. They're used to watching these high-quality broadcasts, stuff like StarCraft, which has a much larger audience and more experience doing it with their commentators. And it's also just so much more watchable, which is a key difference between Magic and many other things. Like, even someone who knows next to nothing about StarCraft could be like channel surfing and just see a game of StarCraft and like, oh, what's that? There's some spaceships and aliens and stuff. What's going on? But someone channel surfing and sees a game of Magic is gonna like pause for maybe a second or two before they're just like, I don't know what the hell this is. All right, I'm just moving on. Like, Magic's just way less approachable in that way. So that's a hurdle, and I think that Magic will rely on building its community before it can really build its, like, the community is the audience, so you can't really build the product too much beyond the community you have for it. As for SCG Live and even Star City Games, like, we're always looking for new broadcasts. We have some things in the can, can't really talk about, but we're definitely trying new things at all times and listening for especially good feedback. I've been commentating a lot more lately, running back up at a lot of these opens, and that's a skill set I hadn't developed prior to actually doing it. I commentated, like, I don't know, maybe 5 rounds in, like, the past year before, like, 2 months ago, and then since then I've commentated, like, 10 rounds or something like that. So it's definitely a process, and it's a fun work, though, So basically, that was a really long-winded way of saying that Magic coverage is going to kind of inch ahead, and it's going to be on the back of the people watching it to let it happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully people are as fascinated as I am. I am sort of a freak in that I watch like almost every sort of, I don't know if I'd classify Magic as an esport really, but every sort of game that is being broadcast on the internet, I watch the coverage pretty much of, like, League of Legends, StarCraft 2, some of the fighting communities, the other MOBA games, Dota 2. I think Han has fallen out of favor at this point. But basically every game, just to see like what they're doing. I also watch traditional games like baseball, football, basketball, that kind of stuff. See what the announcers have got going on and what's popular in that particular community. And yeah, I think the relationship between those games and Magic is a very interesting one. The last thing I really wanted to touch on before we got the heck out of Dodge was what you guys were looking to see out of Magic broadcasting in the future. And I don't know, I have one particular thing in mind which I think would be my personal biggest concern for Magic broadcasting. But I don't know how feasible it is technologically, if it's if the technology doesn't exist, if it's too expensive, what the actual problem is. But my personal largest concern is having a clear view of the cards in both players' hands. That is my biggest concern when watching a game of Magic, because I don't feel like I am getting a clear picture of what's going on in the game if I can't tell for sure what's in both players' hands. I would go so far as to say that I am actively not interested in watching a match of Magic being broadcast unless I can tell what's in both players' hands, in addition to what's on the board. So I'm interested if if when the time comes, Glenn, you actually know. Like, I'm sure there are challenges related, because I'm sure it's not like you guys are like, oh, I never thought of that. People wanted to see what's in the hand. So like, I'm sure you've been over that. But
our director, Jeremy Knoll, is real funny about it, because we have meetings all the time, and we're very open at Star City. Like, people from other departments can bring us ideas, and we have a lot of ways to just get anything done that someone comes up with a good idea. We're like, all right, well, it goes through this process, we evaluate it here. So we'll have meetings and discuss it, and a wide variety of these are often just, Jeremy, who's our head video guy, is just like, yeah, that would be sweet. and I would like to do it, but
Yeah.
and you know there are a lot of limitations. The hand thing is really tough, just because you know people are different sizes. That's kind of a weird thing about them. They also behave differently and unpredictably.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever played Magic against a person. If you have, you're probably aware of all of these facts. They hold their hands in different places. They're left-handed, they're right-handed. They shuffle their cards one way. They put their hand face down. They, you know, drop it under the table because nobody taught them not to do that. So it's really hard. It's not like poker where the cards are always going to be in the same place and you can just always get that guy. And if he's not doing it right, you can send someone out and be like, hey, man, come on, just put your cards in front of the camera. Which, you know, that in and of itself actually took a while to get developed on poker for anyone who is interested in the history of that. Because players, you know, kind of felt like they were actually giving away value for free. You know, like they paid to play in the tournament. They didn't pay to give poker lessons to people. So that was an amusing argument back in the day. But obviously since then, pretty much everyone is caved. Nobody is like actively trying to conceal their hands. And in Magic, that's not necessarily the case. It's not so much that people are actively against the idea. It's just that the things they do make it nearly impossible. And we've tried a number of solutions, and we still are trying a number of solutions. In our playtesting videos with Jerry and Brad, it's an issue we've attempted to solve in a number of ways with varying degrees of success. And at the end of the day, it's just, I think there probably is a way to do it. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how cost effective it is. You know, incorporating yet another camera into the setup. We already have a 3-camera setup times 2 because we have, you know, 2 setups at multiple tables to make match switching faster. Perhaps incorporating another camera on each player's side that can, like, you know, come up similar to a pocket cam is viable, but that plays with a lot of issues like lighting and positioning, and you know, players are just not going to be super responsive to that. So it needs to be exactly right, kind of, in that it needs to encompass a lot of options. People have to be able to behave normally. Like, you can't allow coverage to disrupt the integrity of a game.
Yeah.
That's actually like a really big deal to me personally, and it's super important. Like when I'm covering matches, you know, even like we're in an untimed top 8, like I'm never asking a player like, hey, whoa, slow down a second, you know, like you play too fast. Like I never do that. I just write what I can and then like fix it later. And I write pretty quick, obviously, so it's not usually a problem. But sometimes you have to start taking notes instead of like actually writing the match, stuff like that. And it's definitely, it's important that coverage is showcasing Magic rather than, you know, like manipulating Magic, if that makes sense.
Yep. I would say that you can't have coverage interact with the tournament games at all, or it calls into question the integrity of your tournament, which is really,
Yeah.
really terrible. So like,
It's become really difficult with the IPG changes too, because I actually got certified as a judge specifically because while covering matches, I would see rules violations, and it was really awkward for me to be correcting them if I wasn't a judge, especially if there was a table judge there. And there were lots of things that, like, over time, I'd just become used to seeing players kind of mess up because it's not something they think about a lot. The most common thing, I think, like during Call Blade was obviously when I started doing coverage. So, like, by far, the biggest screw up I saw people making was, you know, like they'd attack their Squadron Hawk into another Squadron Hawk when it had Sword of Feast and Famine, and then post combat they're like, move this Sword of Feast and Famine to another Squadron Hawk, go, and they just leave their guy in play. Like that I saw that happen like close to 100 times, like just a ton. And every time it's like, that guy's dead now, you know, like. And now that I used to do it for triggers too, you know, they missed their Shrine of Burning Rage. I'm like, counter, and they put it on. But then now we've got all these changes. It's so much more awkward to try and keep the game states legal, so it's kind of become more hands-off. And it's difficult to try and provide like legal games that won't get mocked while at the same time operating within the role of coverage. I know that Bill Stark, who does a lot of coverage, he's working with Wizards Play Network now, I think, primarily, but like obviously was a big name in coverage. He was my predecessor at SCG. His personal philosophy is just hands off, like doesn't say a word about anything. And I'm obviously personally a little more proactive, as you could surmise from my activities in 2011. But it's a balance. Like that's all it really is, you know.
does he ever? Do you know if he ever like put a thing on the table but didn't say anything? No,
Who?
am I going too? Sorry, I'm going too deep on that. I was going for a cheeseburger Bill Stark joke, but we didn't get there.
Man, you just explained it, and I still didn't know what was going
Oh,
on.
it was an anecdote from our game state days way back.
I
Well,
give you +1, dude. I
yeah,
love it.
All right, all right.
we'll go into that some other time. Sorry, I wanted to give the other people a chance to actually say something because we sort of rambled about that. I mean, I sort of tricked you into answering my own question, I think, and didn't let anyone else go. So, who's going first? Steven, you get to go first. After me. What do you want to see in the future from Magic Broadcasting?
Almost exactly the same thing you want to see, except deeper. Like, I want to be able to see the deck lists as I'm watching. That's really important to me. I don't want to like listen to the commentators telling me what's in their sideboards and what they think should be sideboarded. I want to actually see the 15 cards in the sideboard so I can do that visually. I have like a big computer screen here. I want to like do the stuff. Um, Definitely what's in their hands, but also what's in their deck at all times, so I can work out like how many outs they're drawing to, which out they should be drawing to, etc. I don't think it's unreasonable to have a running list of which cards remain in somebody's deck. Um, if you can work out like which cards are in their graveyard, their hand, and in play. Seems seems like you just like take the deck list minus this. Um, Stuff like that I think is the most important to me. But that's, I mean, obviously that's because I'm like a very theoretical game state related player. Game state. Um, I could also see like throwing in heart rate monitors because that's cool, you know, throwing in, I don't know, more information about the players. Like Glenn was saying, like nobody's gonna like stop by a Magic stream for more than a few seconds unless they know what Magic is right now. But I think there are ways you could adjust coverage to get it more appealing to the average person. Um, you could have a beginner stream where like the rules are getting explained. You could have more being said about the players in the game. You can like role play it. These fantastic wizards are slinging lightning bolts.
Yeah,
Stuff like that.
I refuse to do that. So
But I mean, there are like other ways to take it, I think, to make it more appealing to the, you know, average Joe. And I think that a blend of technology, which makes it more engaging to the super competitive player, all the information being there so we can think about what's going on in the game and be involved in the game as it happens, plus technology to get the newer player in. And a lot of those are going to overlap. Stuff like having deck lists where you can mouse over the card and see what the cards do. That's going to appeal to a new player as well as like a competitive player. Yeah, that's I don't care much about, like, you guys are doing great as far as commentary goes. You're charismatic, whatever. You're learning. I think the technology behind it is a little bit more what I want to see improved.
All right. Let's go to Seti Bear now, I think.
okay. Um, there are two things that I would like to see. I'm not sure how feasible they are, but these are the things that I would like to see done. The first one goes back to your opening hand thing that you said, Adam. It has to do with hands in general, but I think that if you had to make a distinction between like what's more relevant, I want to say it's like opening hand versus like their hand later in the game. But then like if you tune in like while a game's happening, then you're not really sure like what they're gonna have in their hand. But whatever. So like there's like the Star City table, and then what I was thinking you could do, and I don't. This is probably expensive and not feasible, but on the edge of it, it could be glass, and then you'd have the players when they draw their hands just lay their 7 cards on the glass face down, and then a camera would be underneath looking up at the opening 7 cards. So that then, you know, it shows the 7 cards to the audience at home, and then they can pick up their cards and decide if they want to keep or mulligan. And like that way, like you can see the 7 cards that the person is making a decision between instead of trying to guess what's in their hand. Now, I'm sure that that is expensive, and I would add another camera or 2 to the setup, but that is just my initial idea as far as like getting an idea of what is in someone's hand. The other thing that I would kind of want to see, and this is kind of stealing from StarCraft a little bit, is like they have like these huge audiences at these tournaments, and like the players are playing, but also there's like a huge TV for the audiences to watch the games while they're at the tournament. So I was thinking that like Magic should have one of those for like the feature match that's on camera for the people who are at the tournament that are watching. I think it would make it more spectator friendly for people who just want to come to the tournament and hang out, or like if they're out of the tournament, because I've never really felt like games are all that watchable when like everyone's trying to crowd around the feature match area and you can't get a good look at what's going on. So I think like for the match that's on camera and being covered by commentators, you could have that match on like a TV as well. Like if you guys did like the tent that you guys have at Star City, like you have the TV above the tent and then people can just watch it. Or it's just like in a completely different area of the room like they have at Pro Tours. But I know that like you know, some other games have like these TVs that people can actually watch. So I was thinking that maybe that would be a feasible idea as well. But and then like you just have it so like the players who are actually playing the game can't hear the coverage or see the TVs. That's all. But I think like one of the things that's going to happen moving forward is that it's going to have to become a more spectator-friendly game. And streaming is obviously a step in the right direction. And I think that going to a tournament and birding there is in the right direction as well. One of the things that I think kind of took away from making it spectator-friendly is they made the Pro Tours private. So like you can watch it from home, and they want to make the Pro Tour like more of a big deal. But I think that they should make it so that it's streaming at home for people who can't make it to wherever the location is, like if it's in Dublin. But if like the Euros like want to all go to Dublin and like watch the PT, they can do that. So that's those are like just the two ideas. I think that I'm not sure how feasible one is versus the other, just because like I'm not a technology guy and I don't know the cost of these things. But that's all that I think would be like a good idea as far as like updating Magic coverage.
All right.
Or broadcasting.
Yeah. So let's go to Glenn. I know you might actually have some commentary on the things that people have also said, but give us your vast array of coverage knowledge in whatever form you choose.
Sure. These are all like pretty reasonable ideas. I personally want a custom. I'm not alone in this, but I definitely am one of the people that starts in favor of like a custom feature match table that we bring that like allows us to do a number of things, and like having a way to actually get opening hands like deliberately filmed is one of those things. Some ideas like very similar to the glass have been bandied about for that basically. And right now, like it's like a thing that's on we should figure out how to do this list, you know, like more so than a let's get this done list, because you kind of have to engineer it. You have to figure out how to pack it. You guys obviously like don't work for SCG, so you don't know this, but like we build, like we have to carry all this stuff to events in vans. Like every event has a van driven to it somehow by someone. And we've replaced the van that we use, I think, twice in the last year already, just to try and get more stuff in it. And I mean, who knows? Like we might be replacing it again soon. So like actually getting everything packed into like one cargo van is more of a chore than it might initially appear. Also safely being another factor. So there is like a finite amount of equipment you can bring to an event, and everything you bring adds to it. Our current setup has added a fair bit because we upgraded to HD, and our cables are huge and take up a ton of space. So that's one thing. The TV issue, airing, and that kind of loops back to the same, it shares an issue with the deck list being displayed while people play, in that we're trying to, it's always a fight between the integrity of the tournament and coverage, like we described, you know, how you have to try to balance it. We never want to like interfere in a negative way. And we also want to make coverage something players are like never feeling hostile about. Like we don't want people mad that they got featured, because that just, even though they really don't have like anything to do about it, we don't require people to play their matches, but if they come to our events, like that is basically, you know, a release, and that we can use them for media and marketing purposes. Like that's one of the reasons that we run the events in the first place. So if you're in the room and we want to feature match you, you can say, hey, can you please not feature match me? And I can say, yeah, sure, I'll try and not feature match you if that's the thing that you don't want to do. But if I say no, like that's pretty much it. Like you're either feature matched or we have to do something we don't want to do, which is going to be like penalize you, and probably the only real penalty that I think works there is the TO disqualification from the tournament for just not following the rules of the tournament. It'd be the same as if, you know, like you stole a bag or something, we had to kick you out, because these are the rules that the tournament operates under. and we've never had to use that weapon. We obviously don't want to ever have to use that weapon. I don't want to ever have to like tell someone like, I mean, you have to do it here, play your match under this camera, or like I have to kick you out of my tournament, and I really don't want to do that. So it's better if there's a friendly relationship. You don't want people just angry about being featured. But you can only push them so far, you know, like you make them play in front of everyone under these cameras. You you put their deck lists up where other people can see them. Their cards start getting circulated and scouted, that kind of thing. Like, it's a fine line. We've had debates. There are different camps on the subject, like many camps. So I'm curious. I'd love to hear what the chat has to say. Actually, I'll go through it after the cast to see. But like, if you were playing in a tournament, you know, would you understand wanting your full deck list available to like anyone who could access the stream during the tournament? Like, you have to keep in mind there are people at home watching who can text their friends, like stuff like that. And when you're in an undefeated bracket, that's like a big deal. Like getting into like the rounds before you can draw, like there are only, you know, like 6 players, and odds are that like 2 of those players were on the stream. Maybe that match finished early, so the other 2 were also on the stream. So you've got potentially a lot of information about 4 deck lists that someone has to play against, and if one person has the information, the other person doesn't, like that's really imbalancing. So those are the concerns that we basically have to address, and trying to figure out how to make sure that it works out and that we're not diminishing people's desire to play in our tournaments. Because that's first and foremost like a primary concern. If there's no one playing, like there's no one to cover. So I want to keep these things within range. So I try to be the voice. I play devil's advocate on the topic a lot. Like, obviously, I want to put everything up. I want to put their deck list up. I want to put their sideboard up. I want to put the deck list they played last week up. Like, everything I can. But at the same time, someone has to make sure that, you know, the voice of the player who doesn't want any of the information given out is voiced. So that's usually me in the meetings. I'm the guy who's saying, well, I would not want to play if, you know, I had to show my entire sideboard every round I got featured. Like, that would upset me. So that's kind of where we're at on that, and I'd be very interested to hear other opinions on the topic. So if you're in the chat, definitely sound off. Especially if you're a person who plays under the cameras a fair bit. One of our various Pro Tour Grand Prix grinders out there. Be glad to hear from you.
All right. Well, I think we're going to be winding up this topic for this show, but I suspect this is not the last you have heard of this topic, given the sort of interest ranges of the people involved in this particular show. Suspect it will be back at some later time. But anyway, I want to wrap up this episode. I think we've run about our length, so let's just get final thoughts and/or shoutouts or anything you have left to say. We'll start with Steven. Steven, do you have anything? Any final words?
I said that I'd get that link for you guys with my brother playing StarCraft. I'm going to. I have to go ask him for it, and I will tell you. Magic stuff? I don't know. I just talked a lot about Magic. My brother's real cool.
All right. Zed, you have any final thoughts?
Just things that are going on for me this week. I'm doing a drafting with article that'll be up on Wednesday for M13. I am going to be it's going to be Legacy Week on my stream, and I will be streaming the Magic Online Championship Series on Saturday at whatever time it is, playing Legacy. So, if you guys have nothing to do this weekend, and I don't know what events are scheduled, you can watch that, and my stream Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I had a blast as usual.
All right. Glenn, do you have any final thoughts for us?
No, not really. Just if you guys want to give us coverage advice, you can always send it to me. I'm on Twitter and Facebook. I do get to celebrate hitting 1,337 followers this weekend, so that's right, guys. We're elite.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I screenshotted it.
You're pathetic.
Do you
very much so.
Take pictures of your car odometer when it rolls over into like boobs and stuff like that?
Yes.
Is that all? Okay, good.
I took a picture when my car hit leak too. Like.
Okay. Excellent. Just wanted to make sure we were on the same page all around. Yep. The only thing I wanted to say is that Steven is actually coming to us from Seattle, I think, this episode. He is from very far away from where he actually lives. So the post-production on this episode might be a little bit slow. I'm going to try and do the upload afterwards, but it may take a couple days for us to get like the pure audio version of this up, depending on how exactly it goes. But I will try and do the best that I can, and as soon as if something doesn't work for whatever reason, as soon as Steven gets back, which we will have it up. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. It has been a blast, and we will be back next Monday. So, thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.